Hello, neighbor. This is Pat Boone, and like you, I'm listening to Dispatch Radio.
All right, folks, I get to do one of my favorite things, and that is promote another great book to you. This one is called Erasing America. It's Losing Our Future by Destroying Our Past by Dr. James Robbins. And it is such an incredible examination of sort of the assault that we've talked about many times in this show of everything from free speech to the national anthem to statues to our education system. And if you pick up this book, one of the things you're going to find it is just chock full of amazing quotes, positive and negative, depending on your perspective, all through the book from all sorts of different figures, whether it be historical or political. Just really an incredible resource and definitely a great catch you up. You know, if you know someone who's kind of been tuned out for the last couple of years, or you want to try to wake somebody up, or just to kind of get a refresher, this is a great book for you, and you want to get a copy of it. It's great to have Dr. Robbins on with us. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, Brandon, doing great.
Oh man, I tell you what, love the book. It is a really easy read, page turns quickly. Wish it was a more positive topic, but I totally understand because we've been covering this stuff for years. Right off the bat, I mean, obviously it doesn't take more than a few pages in, and you really hit the nail on the head when you quote Michael Moore, of all people, who talks about kind of like how he and the left sees America, right? It's a nation founded on genocide, built on the backs of slaves, and maintained through the subjugation of women to second-class citizenship and economic disempowerment. I mean, it really is a divide that kind of basically that one sentence almost empowers this divide that you're talking about that kind of runs through the whole book.
Oh, yeah, I thought that quote was really the perfect summation of their view of America, their extremely negative view of our country. It's strange to have to write a book to promote a positive view of America, you know, the kind of view that we probably grew up with, that, you know, land of the free, home of the brave. No, it's not. It's the land of the slave. But, you know, that's Michael Moore. And throughout the book, I use quotes like that from the left to show, look, this is actually what they believe in their own words.
Yeah, it definitely is a theme that kind of keeps coming up and is a great reminder of what some of the motivations of these individuals are. And as you were putting this together, sort of give me an idea of kind of how you kind of created that outline, because your book goes through so many different topics, like I said in the opening, whether it be the, you know, tearing down statues, whether it be, you know, attack on the flag or the national anthem, Christmas holidays, it'd be the border. I mean, there's so many different avenues here. You kind of whittled it down to sort of like about 12 main topics. How did you go about doing that?
Well, basically, it was widening circles. I had written some articles in USA Today and Wall Street Journal about the Confederate statues controversy. And when Regnery asked if I wanted to do a book, I said, sure, but it won't just be that, because I wanted to sort of look at it, you know, starting with that and then widening it out. You know, you go from there to the founders, and then you go to other presidents, and then you go to the Constitution and to the flag, and, you know, it just keeps going, and then to holidays and political correctness in general. So it's kind of a, you know, using the starting point as this flashpoint, but then showing that, and, you know, again, following the lead of the progressives and the left. It's just not that one issue. It's the whole thing. It's the whole country that they're indicting.
Yeah, and, you know, when you're talking about, you know, covering on the statues and you see some of these unfold, one of the things that in my mind is just how there is no sort of letting go of the past. I mean, they really are behaving like the Civil War was 20 years ago, right? We should all be indicted for something that happened, possibly connected to a distant relative of someone in the South. They don't even know the historical context of many of these things. I mean, how do we ever sort of kind of heal from that when you got people that want to ban Dukes of Hazzard, for the love of Pete?
Well, you know, it used to be healed. That's the interesting thing. You can go back to, you know, starting with Appomattox, where it was really the Union that was making peace, not the Confederates. So the Confederates were beaten. I mean, they were defeated. And then it was up to the North to sort of say, okay, fine, we're not going to have a punitive peace. We're not going to have, you know, mass trials and have everybody exiled and stuff like that. That generation got together and they said, okay, we're going to move on as a country. You know, as Ulysses S. Grant said, you know, the Confederates are Americans now. So starting from then and then moving on into the 20th century and so forth, pretty much it was settled. I mean, the resolution of the war was settled. The South was defeated, slavery was abolished, and that's it, and we move on. It's only in the last 10, 12, or 20 years or so that you get people wanting to rip off that Band-Aid. They want to reopen the wound. And so, for example, you have the Chief of Staff of the White House, General Kelly, saying something nice about Robert E. Lee. He was an honorable man. Well, throughout our history, that's a non-controversial statement. No one would bat an eye at that. And I have quotes in there from Franklin Roosevelt, John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, whoever, saying basically the same thing, and no one cared. But he says it recently, and he is castigated. He's like, part of the lost cause mythology and all this jazz. So it's just a recent thing that the Civil War is suddenly a controversy again. And as you say, it's people who have no connection to this war. But this was 150 years ago.
And and again, there's such a heroism being tied to tearing down the statues, removing portraits. I mean, you can't even get through a TV show. Like, we're trying to watch Black Lightning is this show on the CW. It's supposed to be about superheroes, and they glorify the daughter going to the rally to spray paint on a statue. It was glorified in the episode as it was a heroic move, and it was just disgusting.
Oh, yeah, and I quote opinion polls throughout the book showing that most Americans do not approve of this thing. Any kind of violence like that, any kind of vandalism. People just don't want that being done to their history unilaterally by this small, angry, violent group of radicals. They do not represent most Americans. They don't even represent most liberals. I mean, they're just a really vocal, violent, tight little group, and, they just want to get it done. I mean, look at the people who were tearing down this thing at UNC. I mean, those are just like socialists. Okay, they don't represent anybody. They can't win an election. They can't do anything like that. So let's not think that this is some kind of a popular movement to tear down America. But unfortunately, it's an extremely vocal movement, and it's in the media, it's in the education system, and it's in politics.
How do we deal with that in the college campuses? Let me give you an example. Someone very close to me is taking a college class, a mandatory class. It's called Cultural and Diversity, and the first lesson is on our whiteness and the shame that should come from our whiteness. And she really didn't even know how to approach the class. Like, she said, I have to write a paper on how I'm oppressed as a female and how I'm privileged for being white. And I'm like, I really don't know exactly how to advise a student when they ask me that.
Well, I've always been a believer that the Title IX lawsuits are a good way to go. The whole Title IX system was put in place so that feminists could start beating up on people on campus. But I think there's an increasing awareness among conservatives and just among normal people who don't want to be indoctrinated, that when they are presented with something like that, like, your whiteness is a crime and you have to atone for it, you can say, look, you're creating a hostile environment on campus, which is what Title IX is supposed to stop. And so if you don't cut it out, we're just going to sue you. I think that would be great. This should be happening all over America. Oh, man, I wish that was so true. I wish we could have like that. And I wish campus reform was lit up with those lawsuits instead of some of the other nonsense that we're seeing. It's starting, though. It's starting. That's true. That's true. Let me turn to the national anthem. And, the one thing that bothers me about this, and I was really I grew up a sports nut and a basketball fan, and I know that in the 90s, Chris Jackson did a protest, and he said, I'm Muhammad Abdul-Rauf, I protest this, whatever. And he got suspended for one game, and that was the end of that. Now we've somehow turned this into an anti-Trump movement. Like, no one really knows even what they're protesting anymore. Is there a way to really come back from all this, or do we just continue to do our thing and let the financial negative impact of the NFL speak for itself? Yeah, I use that basketball example in the book as what the NFL should have done with Kaepernick once he started this protest. They should have just said, knock it off or you're gone. Like President Trump said, you're fired. Whether the NFL can come back from this, I'm not sure. They've had 2 years of double-digit ratings drops. They have an active boycott movement. They've tried to deal with it, kind of fumbling around. First they ignored it, then they did this $10 million social justice program, which is really a new grievance bureaucracy that they're going to have to deal with that will only perpetuate the problem. Okay, but fine, they don't know that yet. And then they tried to ban it, but the players union got upset, and it's just a thing. The only way they're really going to solve it is say, look, if you kneel, if you protest, you're fired, period. You're out of the game. They won't do that. They're not strong enough willed to do that. So fine. They're just destroying this beautiful thing called pro football that was built in an all-American image. They're allowing these radicals to hijack it. And that's all anyone's going to talk about. So until they wrap their mind around the business consequences of this, which is fewer fans, no revenue, TV ratings in the dumper, they're not going to get it together. And if they just fired somebody, then it would end.
We're talking with Dr. James Robbins about his brand new book, Erasing America, and it is truly tremendous, folks. And if you need a resource to kind of catch yourself up on some of the different things, some of the different assaults from the left, and if you need to understand, and this I think is an essence of the book, and if you need to understand the difference between liberalism and leftism, the shift and the define, Dave Rubin did a video on this, and many of us have shifted using that language. The book really does, even though it's not a theme that Dr. Robbins is using, it is the message that he's giving you. He's giving you an explanation of where people come down on this that will tell you how liberal or left your friend or relative or even you are. It is incredible. And I think, Dr. Robbins, I read a survey yesterday or day before, and it said, 52% of people can't name a single person on the Supreme Court. How on earth do I continue to try to tell anyone, other than someone that wants to be, let's say, a doctor, lawyer, or a nurse, go to a university, when that's literally we're allowing people to get through the entire system, and they don't even have a clue to what's going on with the people that have some of the most significant impact of their life.
Yeah, I talk about that in the book, about the kind of disutility of education these days, when it's just it becomes an indoctrination factory. And when I hear a poll of something like, oh, people are ignorant of history or ignorant of how government works, I kind of have mixed feelings about it, because on the one hand, people should be educated and they should know these things. But on the other hand, if they go to a university to get this knowledge, then they're going to learn about how evil our country is and how, terrible our history was. So, it's really hard for me to determine where to come down on that, except people should learn the right history.
You have a little mention of Shirley Temple and her legacy. One of her biggest films ever was The Littlest Rebel, and how this dance with Bojangles. We have moved so far in entertainment now that there's like a campaign to make sure Disney hires the right kind of people to do a movie on Aladdin or Mulan, right? I mean, what on earth are we doing in the entertainment industry when it's that? I don't know how you ever go back from that, because Hollywood's not being held accountable to anything.
Well, I think that you can come back from it because, number one, a lot is going on outside of Hollywood now. There's sort of, with peak TV keeps peaking and sort of peak content. There's a lot that's being written and produced and done outside of Hollywood. I talk about the success of the Hallmark Channel, for example. Slammed by the left. I mean, they hate the Christmas programming in this.
Yep.
But you know what? Unlike the NFL, which has had years of double-digit decreases, Hallmark ratings are double-digit increasing year by year. So there's definitely a thirst for this. I mean, there's definitely an audience that doesn't want to be preached to, doesn't want to be offended, doesn't want to be guilt-tripped or anything else. They just want to be entertained. And so I think it can be done when producers and people who run networks and things understand there are huge ratings out there for content that doesn't offend the viewers.
We're talking with Dr. James Robbins about his brand new book, Erasing America. It's available online. We'll link to the Amazon link because that's the one that a lot of people ask us to make sure that we include. We'll put that there for you so you can grab a copy. A great book. Get some little sticky notes and mark up some pages and things like that, because it's an incredible resource guide through things that have transpired over the last few years especially. And I want to end, Dr. Robbins, with a question about the tribalism. And I want to be a little little tough here too. How do you defend yourself that you're not contributing to the tribalism between the left and the right by writing a book like this that it's, obviously from one perspective? And then more importantly, what do we do to kind of come back from some of this tribalism?
Oh, well, I'm totally not contributing to it because the message of my book, and it's explicit, particularly in the chapter on immigration, is that we should all get together. We should all, honor our country. It used to be, not too long ago, that honoring the flag, honoring the national anthem, and honoring the country in general was not a political statement. It was just what we do. It was above politics. It was honoring the country. We all live here. We're all Americans. That's not a political statement. Today, if you wave a flag or, sing the Star Spangled Banner, apparently, you're taking a political stand. Well, that's ridiculous. That is not politics. That is above politics. So what I'm saying in my book is we have to get back to a common agreement that this is a good country. It's got a great history. Yes, there are bad parts of it, but there are many more great parts of it, and we have to honor that. So the way we get back from that tribalism is reconvene around an idea that America is a wonderful country. It was built on an ideal of freedom, and it's constantly getting better.
Wow, that is so well said. You struck a nerve with me personally. I remember it was about 2012 or so, and I was asked to speak briefly at it was more of a libertarian-leaning event, and the person that came on after me was a very sort of anti-American libertarian, and the American exceptionalism stuff to the nth degree, and the almost hatred of America for being exceptional with all the wrong perspectives. And I was like, I basically told him after that I'll never come back. I said, I can't align myself with that same message, and it's exactly what you're saying is we got our blemishes and we got our scars, and we need to just figure out how to kind of move forward and learn from them, not try to remove them from our past or be ashamed of them. Let's figure out how to work through it. So.
Oh, yeah, and not just that, because a lot of people who defend American history do it on that basis, like, let's improve our bad things. Let's also celebrate our good things.
Absolutely.
Let's recognize, the 90% of stuff that's out there in our history that's fantastic. Let's elevate that. It's not just we have to know the past so we don't make mistakes. We also have to be inspired by the past, and that's my message.
So, Dr. Robbins, as we close out now, what has happened since you wrote the book that would be in the book? So what are some of the stories that have really struck you, kind of shocking, or have either ramped up or actually gone the other way? Like, wow, this is great to see this happen.
Brandon, we were editing that thing right up to the end because every day there's something new.
Every day.
The day the book came out was the day that they tore down Silent Sam at UNC.
Wow.
So, and then what would have been in the book for sure was when Andrew Cuomo said America's not that great. Absolutely. I would have put him right up there with Michael Moore.
Yeah. Basically, it just don't wait long. There'll be a part 2 that's writing itself for you at this moment. So just kind of hang in there and take some notes. Well, Dr. Robbins, it's been great having you on the show. We can't thank you enough. Good luck with the book. Erasing America, everyone. Make sure you catch the book, get a copy for yourselves. Stay with us. We have more to come.